Ever since the new neighbors moved into the house across the street, I felt a creeping unease. They arrived under the cloak of night, their belongings shrouded in black plastic. No moving trucks, no friendly waves, just shadows passing through the dim glow of their porch light. Their windows were always covered, thick curtains drawn at all hours. At first, I thought they were just private people, but then I noticed the cameras. Small, almost invisible, they dotted the exterior of their house. Some pointed directly at mine. I tried to introduce myself, a plate of cookies in hand, but the door was answered by a man with a gaunt face and piercing eyes. He didn't speak, only took the plate and shut the door with a soft click that sounded final. I never got the plate back. Whispers began to circulate in the neighborhood. Pets started disappearing, only to be found days later, unharmed but behaving oddly, as if they'd been changed. The air around their house seemed to buzz with static, and sometimes, late at night, I'd hear chanting, a low rhythmic drone that made my head ache. One evening, I saw something that chilled me to the core. Through a gap in the curtains, I glimpsed the interior of their home. There were no furnishings, no decorations, just a single chair in the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of salt and strange symbols etched into the floor. I started to receive letters, no return address, filled with ramblings about portals and otherworldly beings. The handwriting was erratic, but it matched the symbols I had seen. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I felt eyes on me at all times, and the static in the air grew louder, more insistent. Then came the night that broke me. I awoke to find one of the neighbors standing at the foot of my bed. She was silent, her eyes black voids in the moonlight. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She raised a finger to her lips and whispered, "Soon," before vanishing into the darkness. I left the next morning, my sanity fraying at the edges. I don't know what they are or what they want, but I know I can't be near them. The static follows me still, a constant reminder that there are things in this world that are beyond understanding, and some doors, once opened, can never be closed. When I first saw the for rent sign on the quaint house nestled at the end of the lane, it felt like fate. The landlord was eager to have it occupied, and I was just as eager for a new beginning. The neighborhood was picturesque, each house with its own character, but it was the one next door that caught my attention, a 2-story home with an air of neglect. My neighbor was a peculiar man. He kept to himself, his face always hidden beneath the brim of a tattered hat. Our interactions were limited to curt nods, but his gaze lingered a little too long, sending shivers down my spine. Days turned into weeks, and I began to notice strange occurrences. The sound of digging at odd hours, the faint smell of chemicals wafting from his yard, and an unsettling feeling of being watched. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, but the unease grew. One evening, as I watered my plants, I saw him staring intently from his window. His eyes were cold, calculating. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I double-checked the locks, but sleep eluded me. The next day, when I saw him leave his house, I decided to go over the fence and investigate his garden, the place I heard weird digging sounds from. I had no idea what I was doing, and I hoped he didn't have a security camera installed out of his house, or else I would be screwed. I found a series of deep, freshly dug holes in his garden. My curiosity turned to horror when I spotted a familiar necklace, a piece that belonged to a missing person from the news, hanging from a branch near one of the holes. I reported my findings to the police, but they found nothing conclusive. The man was questioned and released, his glare burning into me as he returned home. That's when I knew I had made a grave mistake. That night, the terror I had felt became a reality. The sound of glass breaking jolted me awake. He was inside my house, his footsteps echoing in the silence. I hid in the closet, my breath shallow, as I dialed for help. "Please hurry," I whispered to the operator. He knows I've seen too much. The minutes stretched on, each second an eternity. I could hear him searching, getting closer. Then as quickly as it began, the chaos ceased. The police arrived to find the back door ajar, but he was gone. They never caught him. I couldn't stay, knowing he was out there and that he had been in my home. I left everything behind, seeking safety in anonymity. But even now, in a crowded city, I find myself looking over my shoulder, haunted by the memory of the neighbor who could have been a murderer. I had always been a private girl, so when I moved into the quiet cul-de-sac, I was looking forward to some peace. The houses were spaced comfortably apart, each with its own little garden and picket fence. It was an idyllic setting, disrupted only by the arrival of my new neighbor, Thomas, a young man with an unsettling intensity in his eyes. At first, his presence was a mere whisper of curtains twitching in the window next door. Then came the friendly waves, the overly enthusiastic greetings whenever we crossed paths. I responded with polite nods, maintaining my distance, but he didn't take the hint. Gifts started appearing on my doorstep. Cookies, books, mixtapes, all accompanied by notes scrawled in a hurried hand. "For my favorite neighbor," they'd say, or "Can't stop thinking about you." It was odd, but I chalked it up to him being lonely. As weeks passed, his behavior escalated. I'd find him waiting for me when I came home from work, his excuses to talk growing thinner each time. "I just happened to be out here," he'd say, but his eyes betrayed a hunger that made my skin crawl. I tried to be clear, telling him I wasn't interested in anything beyond neighborly civility. He laughed it off, but there was a flash of something dark in his gaze that made me uneasy. Then came the night that confirmed my worst fears. I returned from walking my dog, the evening calm and still, but as I stepped inside, I felt a prickling sensation at the back of my neck, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. I flicked on the lights and froze. My walls were no longer white, but covered in messages written in deep crimson lipstick. "Why won't you be with me? We're perfect for each other. You can't deny our connection." The words were smeared across every surface, a testament to his obsession. I heard a floorboard creak upstairs, and a cold dread settled in my stomach. He was here, in my house. The dog growled, sensing the intruder as I frantically dialed the police. "Please, you have to come quickly," I whispered into the phone. "He's here, and he's not well." The wait for the police was agonizing. Every shadow seemed to move, every silence filled with the echo of his madness. When they finally arrived, he was gone, but the terror he left behind was indelible. I couldn't stay there, not with the memories of that night etched into every corner of the house. I moved away, but the fear followed me. It lingers still, a shadow at the edge of my vision, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying horrors are the ones that wear a friendly face.